Imagine never missing an important meeting again. In this video, I'll break down how to integrate Google Calendar into Outlook. Stay organized and in control of your schedule with just a few clicks. If we haven't met before, my name is Andy, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to integrate Google Calendar and Outlook with a service called Make.com. So Make is a drag and drop no-code integration and automation tool, meaning you can connect your systems like Google Calendar and Outlook and automatically move data from one to the other. You can also use what I teach you in this video to connect to other services. If you don't have a Make.com account yet and want to snag one, you can click this link and you'll get a free month of the core plan, which will give you a chance to get up and running and have plenty of credits to do some testing and see how Make.com works. So let's start by looking at our options when integrating Google Calendar with Outlook. And just a note, we're going to be working with the webmail service that you get with Microsoft 365. All right, so we're over here on the Make.com website. And one thing you can do is you begin to automate your workflows. And if you want to say, I wonder if I can connect this with that, a great way to figure that out is to go over to Make.com, do a Google search for the app you want to integrate, or you can go to their apps page and just scroll down here. And so right here, it shows the Google Calendar integrations. So we want to watch a new calendar item in our Google Calendar, and we want to push that over to our Outlook calendar in Microsoft 365. So what we need to do is start with a trigger. So all automations start with some sort of trigger, which means when something happens, it triggers that automation to run, and then it does some steps. So we're going to look here for our Google Calendar integrations, and there's one trigger. So if I click on that, it'll filter this, and that trigger is watching events. So this triggers when an event is created, updated, deleted, started, or ended for a particular calendar. So this trigger is what we're going to use to start our automation. So if we scroll down, we have this other feature down here on this page where it says connect any app with Google Calendar. So now we can choose any other app and see what the options are for doing that. So as you are beginning your automation journey and you're like, can this app send this data to this, and how does this work, and that kind of thing, you can go right here and kind of experiment with the options that are available. So we've got Google Calendar, and then I've searched Microsoft here, and I'm going to go right here and click on Microsoft 365 Calendar. We're going to click that, and now we have our two apps side by side. So again, our trigger for Google Calendar is watch events. So I'm going to click that right there. And then I'm going to go over here and I want to create an event. So what we're going to do in our automation is when a new event is created in Google Calendar, we're going to create that event and mirror that event over in our Microsoft 365 calendar. So we're going to create an event. So you can see here, this is an option. This is something we can do with these tools. So let's go over to Make and let's actually start building our automation, what Make calls a scenario. All right, so we're over here in Make, and you're going to see that this looks a lot like the page we were just on. It's got our Google Calendar, watch events, and then we've got in a create event over here. We've got some stuff in the middle that we're going to talk about when we build this. I'm going to walk through each one of these modules, then we're going to build it from scratch. So this is our Google Calendar watch events. Now I'm going to start by what this clock is right here on this module. What this module does is it sets up a schedule for checking for new emails. So as you have new emails come in, this automation is going to have to run and check and see if it can find those as they come into your Google Calendar. So this is called a scheduled or a timed automation. So right now, to change that time, you can click here or you can click down here. So you're going to want to run this at regular intervals. For example, if you have a very active calendar, maybe you want to run this every 15 minutes or 30 minutes. As new items come in, it's going to run and check every 15 minutes. The downside of that is if this runs every 15 minutes or 5 minutes throughout the day, every time it runs, if it doesn't find any calendar items, it's going to use up one operation. Or an operation is your credits that you get with your plan to run your automations each month. So if you run this too often, you can run yourself out of operations just by checking for new items. Now you can, in my case, for my calendar, if you were to book a call with me, to get help with a make scenario, which I offer that at my website. You can click right here to do that. I don't let people book more than, so many hours in advance. I think it's 4 hours in advance. Like when you go to my calendar, if it's 8 in the morning, you're not going to be able to book till afternoon. So I give myself a little buffer so somebody doesn't book 15 minutes later than what it actually is. So what you could do in that case is run every 4 hours, but then you can also run it every 4 hours within your business hours. So it's not running in the middle of the night. So if I click on here again, I can do regular intervals. So 4 hours would be 60 times 4, that'd be 240 minutes. So that's going to run every 4 hours, 24/7. So we want to save our operations on this. So we're going to do advanced scheduling, and we're going to say our starting time, we want this to be, let's say, 7 o'clock a.m., and we want it to end at 6 o'clock p.m. All right. Since this is going to run every 4 hours, that means it's going to run at 7 o'clock, and then it's going to run at 11 o'clock, then it's going to run at 3 o'clock, and it's not going to run after 3 o'clock. So really, just for sake of reducing confusion, we're going to set this at 3:15 p.m. All right. So this is going to run every 4 hours, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So 7, 11, and 3 p.m. Then it's not going to run after that. But right now, so far, we've got it running 7 days a week. You're probably like me and you work probably 5 or 6 days a week. I actually only take calls 5 days a week. So I'm just going to run this Monday through Friday. So now what I've done is I've taken the operations of running this every 4 hours, 24/7. I've reduced it down to my office hours, and I've reduced it down further to only the days that I work. So now we've optimized the usage of these operations, so we're not checking it in the middle of the night when people probably aren't up booking calls with us. If you had a use case where you only wanted it to run certain months, you can also do that as well. So I'm going to save that. And it wants to activate the scenario. I'm not ready to do that quite yet. I'm going to say not yet. So that is our scheduling for this scenario. Now let's dig into this first module. So right up here is your connection. Now I already have a connection to my Google Calendar. If you don't, you would want to click Add right here, and that's going to launch the login that you're probably very familiar with. It's going to launch your Google Calendar login, and it's going to authenticate, and it's going to connect Make with your Google Calendar, because they need to talk in order to run this automation. The same is true with our Microsoft 365 calendar that we'll get to in a little bit. Basically, it has to have permissions to talk to your calendar on your account. So we're going to choose our calendar here, and in this case, we want to watch events by the created date. You can do updated, starting, or ending date. If you had a use case where you wanted something to happen at exactly the time the calendar event started, you could choose that, or ended, that kind of thing. All right, so do I want to show deleted events? No, I don't. Query would be if we're searching for some sort of text in the calendar invitation or the description of the calendar. We don't want to do that because we want to get everything. And then our event types are going to be default. And just for testing, I'm going to limit this to 1. Again, this depends on how busy your calendar is. If you have a lot of things coming in and you want to make sure everything's in sync, you would want to raise this number. What this number means is when this scenario runs, if there are 5 new events that have been created, right now it's only going to get 1. And then 4 hours later, it'll get the second one. 4 hours later, it'll get the third one. So you can see where you might get backed up in case, if people are booking with you regularly and you're only getting 1 at a time, you're gonna get out of sync with your calendar. So if you had 8 calls in a day, you would want to set this to 8 and just make sure that it's getting enough. So if you set this to 10 or 15, that would be more than enough to get all of the new bookings and get them synced over to your calendar. Now, if you only have 10-minute bookings, that changes it, and you're going to have to increase that. There's really no issue with making this higher than necessary. If you want to set this to 100 to make sure you don't miss a single booking or a single calendar event, you can do that as well. It's only going to retrieve up to 100 new events when it runs. All right, I'm going to hit cancel there. I don't want to save any events. So now let's talk about attendees to your events. On your events, you'll have an attendees array, and don't worry about what an array is just yet. You can see right down here, I have a list of attendees, and right now this is just me. It says self true, organizer true, display name, and I've accepted the event, which is done by default. So if I had other people on this, I would want to transfer them over to that other calendar so I can see who's coming over on that other calendar. The issue here is Google and Microsoft format those attendees in different ways. So what we have to do here is this is an array iterator. We have to break those attendees out into separate bundles and then put them back together in the way that the Microsoft 365 calendar wants them to be. So basically what we do here is we click in here, we add the attendees array, and then over here we have an array aggregator, and this is going to group those attendees back together for our Microsoft calendar. And then over here in Microsoft Calendar, we're going to just map that data. So we have data from our previous modules. We're going to map that into the new calendar item. Doing this project, I realized how different the labels are between Google Calendar and Microsoft calendars. For example, Microsoft Calendar calls the name of the event a subject, and there's no subject or title really in the Google Calendar. So I had to do my best to kind of translate what Google says to what Microsoft wants. So the subject is I put the summary from our Google Calendar. I put the start date here, the end date. Those are pretty easy. Reminders, I turn reminders off because I'm assuming that the reminders are going to come from my Google Calendar. You could turn these on if you wanted them to come from this calendar as well. All right, and then the body content is the description from over there in Google. And you can see these items all came from this list of variables here. Now, as we scroll down, I didn't have a location for this. If we go down here, show as busy, and then right here are our attendees. So we're going to click in there, and this is where we're going to put this array. You can see as I hover it, it pulses. That is going to put our attendees on this calendar item. And I didn't assign any categories. You could obviously do that, but that is how this is set up. So this is a pretty straightforward scenario. I'm going to jump ahead and show you how to build it. If you feel like you understand it now, you can by all means just pause the video and go build it. From here on, I'll do a step-by-step starting from scratch. All right, so once you have a Make account, you can go to the Scenarios page. That is this icon right over here. Click there, and then we're going to click Create a New Scenario. This is going to give us a brand new fresh scenario to start with. Now, the first thing Make's going to do is going to give us the opportunity to find our trigger. And as we noticed over here before, we're going to do a Google Calendar trigger, and we're going to watch events. So this is the list of all apps in Make. So what you're going to want to do is go right down here and click Google Calendar. And you'll notice there's a list of calendar items. It says show more. My recommendation is just click up here at the top and you'll see the full list. Right here is watch events. So we're going to click there. And now we're into this module. This is our trigger module. I already have a connection, so my connection's right here and it's already set. I'm going to select my calendar here. And then we're going to watch by, go back over here to our scenario. We're going to watch by created date. So by created date is there. Show deleted events, no. Again, we're not going to do a query. If you were looking for an appointment that had the word client in it, you could certainly type client here, and this would search for only events that had the word client. I'm going to leave that blank. I'm going to set this up in such a way that it sends all the data over to our Microsoft calendar. Event type, I'm going to say default and limit actually, the limit, I'm going to do 1, again, just for testing. Once you have this tested and you're ready to turn it on for real, you're going to want to increase this number to 20 or 30 or 8 or whatever makes sense for your use case. What Make is going to do is say, hey, where do you want to start from now on, which means we're going to do nothing and just watch for new events. Do you want to start from a specific date? Do you want to get all of them, which I wouldn't recommend? Or do you want to choose manually? And I'm just going to say since a specific date, and I'm going to choose yesterday and hit save. And then I'm just going to run this so I get some data here to use for testing. All right, so here's an event that I just pulled. This is an event with a client. And so now we have data in our scenario. Now we can more easily map that. So the next thing we want to do, actually what I want to show you here is I have attendees. So I'll show you what my attendee looks like. So we have an email here, which is my email address, display name. The organizer is true. This is on my calendar. And this actually was a client booked this on my calendar through Calendly, but still I'm the organizer because it's my calendar. Is it myself? Yes, it's true. And I've accepted by default. So you can see there's 4 attendees here that we want to transfer over to our Microsoft calendar. So I'm going to go here, and right down here is a module family called Flow Control. If I click that, I want to do an iterator. So if you notice these attendees, they're in an array. You can see it says array right there. So what that is it's multiple items that are technically bundled into one bundle. So this attendee array is one bundle, but there's 4 people inside of that bundle that are attendees. We have to break that one bundle into 4 and then take the 4 and put it back together in one bundle for Microsoft Calendar. If that doesn't make sense, don't worry. You don't need to know that right now. I'm going to show you everything you need to do to go through this process. So right here, our array is our iterator. I'm going to go down here, attendees right here. So no need to open that up. Just click right there and you've mapped the attendees into the array. So if I save this, I'm going to hit save anyway. The other thing I'm mentioning right now is now that we're starting to save and getting into this, you want to give this a good name because otherwise the default names will be really hard to tell what is what in your Make account over time. You want to give it a title that is easily searchable that makes sense for finding this later. All right, so we've iterated this. This little yellow circle says, hey, it really doesn't make sense to leave this module as the last one. So I'm going to add another one here. And I'm going to click on Flow Control again, and we're going to do an array aggregator right there. Now, you may be thinking, we're separating these and putting them right back together. Why are we doing that? The reason is the structure for Microsoft Calendar is going to be different, and it's nearly impossible just to do this manually and map these through. All right, so our source module right here is going to be our iterator, module number 2. So you see it's got the name and the module 2 right there. And our target structure, we're not ready to do that quite yet. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to add, type 365, Microsoft Calendar, and I want to create an event. All right, so again, I've got my calendar. If you don't have a calendar connection yet, you're going to click Add. You're going to go through the process of logging Make into your account and going from there. So if I go back in my sample scenario over here, you can see I've got summary, start, and end. So our subject is actually the summary. So I'm going to go up here to type summary. Right there is our summary. I'm going to drag that over here. You notice I click and drag this over here. You can do one of two things. You can drag these variables here, or you can click where you want it to go and you can click on the variable and it'll jump over there. So a couple ways to do that. I find when working with clients one-on-one, they've figured out one or the other, but not both. So you can actually do it both ways. And sometimes it's easier to get your cursor in the right spot and then just go click it rather than trying to drag it into the right spot on the right hand side. All right, so reminders on. I'm going to say no, and there's really nothing else that is required. I'm going to go over here down at the bottom and I'm going to do attendees. Now this is where I was talking about like you can do one at a time here. Let's say if your use case, there's only 2 attendees. There's you and your boss, for example, that you're syncing these events across. You could just put your email and your boss's email in there and name and hit save and be done. And you wouldn't need these 2 green flow modules. But if you don't know how many people are going to be coming, for example, most of my calls are with myself and another person, but this one is myself and 3 other people. So I didn't anticipate that, and I want to make sure they all get added to this calendar. So the way you do that, I'm going to get rid of these, is you go right here and you click Map. And then click in Attendees, and you're going to add this array that we created in Module 3. Just going to click and add that there and save that. So what that means is, regardless if there's 1 or 4 or 15 people, they're going to all dynamically get added to your calendar event over in Microsoft Calendar. Now I need to go back over here and change some things. And I'm going to go right here and I'm going to choose the target structure as attendees. Now that wasn't there a little bit ago because we hadn't added our Microsoft Calendar. So sometimes we have to go ahead and then come back to take care of that. All right, so there's a little trick I had to do here in my calendar at Attendees. And the reason is I don't always get a name from Google Calendar. And you can see that's required. So we can't skip the name. So let's go back over here. Our email address, I'm going to map email. And then display name, I'm going to click right down here. Now, if that name's empty, I need to put something else in there or it's going to throw an error. So I'm going to move my cursor back. You can move your cursor back and forth. These variables act like text, and so you can move your cursor around inside of them. And that's a lot easier to navigate than trying to click right in the right spot. So I want to say if this is empty, instead of the display name, put the email. So we're going to put the email as the name in case it's empty because we know the email is going to come through. So if we go up here to functions, so we haven't talked about functions yet, but right in here someplace should be an if empty. And it's actually over here here it is. It's over here in general functions. So I'm going to backspace over that variable for now. I'm going to say if empty. And that's going to drop that in there. And what we're going to do, if we click inside of here, again, use that cursor arrow to get in there. We're going to say if the variable, if the name is empty, then put the email instead. All right. So I'm going to say if empty. I'm going to go back to the star, which has my items for mapping. And I'm going to say if display name is empty, I'm going to arrow over one. I'm going to instead put the email. So if there's no name, put the email in here instead, and that will satisfy this required field, and this will not throw an error that way, because there always has to be an email for this to work. We're going to hit save. Now I'm going to do a pro tip here. I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm going to backspace over all of this. You can also type these functions if you begin to memorize them. So if I do if empty, and the spelling matters, and I do an open parenthesis, it creates that first item. So I'm going to say if empty, I'm going to do display name, semicolon, email, close parenthesis. So all of these functions that are gray, you can memorize what they are. And in reality, there's only about 12 or 15 that I use frequently. I have that memorized. I don't memorize everything. All right, I'm going to hit save here. And now we have that mapped over there. Right over here is an auto align. So I'm going to click there. And where that's helpful is, let's say you're building and you've got things like that and kind of messy. It just cleans everything up. I'm going to hit save here. And now I want to run this. I want to see if it runs without throwing any errors. All right, so everything worked here well. So I ran it 2 or 3 times, and here's an example of where it did not find any more events on my calendar. So it ran here and it said didn't find anything. Often I see with people learning Make, they're like, oh, what's broken? Is it this, or this? If this happens to you, always go here and you can see there is no bundles. The data size is 0. So that means it didn't find any calendar items. Now, what if you need to go back and test? What you can do is right click here, choose where to start, And then there's those options we had earlier when we added this module. From now on, since a specific date, all, or choose manually. So that's how you can go back and get some data to run through and test this. This is a pretty easy module. If you have any questions about the array aggregators or iterators, you can click this video. I go into a lot of depth on what those are and how those work. In this video, I've showed you how to integrate Google Calendar into Outlook using a one-way sync. So in this video, I'll pick up where I left off and show you how to synchronize changes to your Microsoft Outlook calendar so that when you make changes in your Microsoft calendar, those changes go back over to your Google Calendar. I hope you'll check out this video and expand your learning with Meg, and I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.